There's a particular kind of quiet that comes before death. Not silence, death is never truly silent.
No,
There's
stay
always
back!
wind, or
What do
she's
you
the
want
rustle
from
of
me?
leaves, always the distant
Please!
call of something alive that will outlive you. But there's a quality to it, a thickness like the world is holding its breath and waiting for you to stop holding yours. Marcus Thorne had heard that quiet before, on battlefields mostly in the moments between the last sword swing and the first body falling. But he'd never expected to hear it here alone in Orc territory, 3 weeks lost and counting down to nothing. The kindling caught with a small whoosh that felt obscenely loud in the evening stillness. Orange flames licked upward, hungry and bright, casting dancing shadows across the small clearing he'd claimed for what he suspected would be his final night. The fire was terrible strategy, a beacon screaming, "Here I am," to anything with eyes in a 50-mile radius. But Marcus was past strategy, past tactics, past caring about anything except the simple animal comfort of warmth. 23 days since he'd taken the wrong trail during a scouting mission. 16 days since his rations had run out. 8 days since he'd seen another human being. And now, as sparks spiraled up into the darkening sky like dying stars, Marcus had the strange, calm certainty that home, whatever that word meant anymore, was no longer a question of when. Only if. He reached into his coat fingers, finding the familiar weight in his inner pocket. The watch. His grandfather's watch passed down through 3 generations of Thorn men who'd all been soldiers and all been good at killing, all been terrible at staying alive. The casing was dented, the crystal cracked in a spiderweb pattern from the Battle of Greystone when a warhammer had caught Marcus square in the ribs and sent him flying into a supply cart. The watch had saved his life that day, absorbed the impact that should have caved in his sternum. But the mechanism inside had shattered gears and springs frozen in their death positions, hands stopped forever at 2:47. Marcus turned it over in his palm. Smooth brass warm from being close to his body. His grandfather used to say a good watch always knew the time, always kept you on schedule, always brought you home for dinner. Funny how something could be completely broken and still feel like the most solid thing in the world. The fire was growing now, pushing back the shadows, making the clearing feel almost safe. Almost. Marcus had chosen this spot carefully, trees on 3 sides forming a natural windbreak, rocks on the 4th creating a barrier. Defensible if you were an optimist, a decent place to die if you were a realist. He was unwrapping what passed for his last meal, a strip of dried meat so tough it could probably substitute for boot leather when the forest stopped pretending to be empty. It wasn't a sound exactly, more like a change in pressure. The feeling of being observed by something that had no interest in being subtle anymore. Marcus's hand moved to his sword before his conscious mind caught up 3 years of warfare, writing reflexes directly into his muscle memory. He didn't draw, just let his palm rest on the pommel and waited. The shadows around his fire began to move with purpose, coalescing into shapes that resolved themselves into figures. 6 of them, all armed, all green, all female, all looking at him with expressions that ranged from desperate hunger to wary curiosity to something that might have been hope wearing a warrior's face. Orc Huntresses. Marcus had fought orc men on a dozen battlefields, had killed them, been nearly killed by them, watched them die with the same messy finality as human soldiers. But Huntresses were different, rarer, more dangerous in some fundamental way, because they didn't fight with the berserker rage of orc warriors. They fought with cold precision, with patience learned from tracking prey for days, with the kind of focused intent that came from knowing that failure meant your clan went hungry. The tallest one stepped forward. Tall for a human perhaps, but average for an orc, just over 6 feet with muscle that spoke of a lifetime carrying weight. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical warrior's knot. Her leather armor was scored with old battles, and she held a spear with the casual competence of someone who'd used it to feed herself more often than fight. Her eyes were amber. Not brown, not yellow, but true amber, like honey held up to firelight. They were assessing him the way a merchant assessed goods at market, taking inventory, calculating value, measuring worth. "You are lost," she said. Her accent was thick, turning consonants into something harder, vowels into something that resonated in the chest. It wasn't a question. Marcus's grip tightened on his sword hilt. "Could be. You are alone. Looks that way. You are human. Last I checked. Behind her, the other huntresses were spreading out with the practiced ease of a pack that had hunted together for years. Not threatening exactly, just eliminating his options with professional efficiency. But they weren't attacking, weren't even moving aggressively, just watching, waiting. "My name is Kara," the lead huntress said, gesturing with her spear to encompass her companions. "War leader of the Thornbriar hunting pack." She looked at his fire and something like amusement flickered across her face. "That is a poor excuse for a fire. You would freeze before dawn." "Probably," Marcus admitted, "but at least I'd die warm first." The corners of Kara's mouth twitched. Might have been a smile. Hard to tell with orcs, their facial expressions didn't quite map to human ones, like looking at a familiar painting where all the proportions were slightly wrong. "How long have you been lost?" she asked. "3 weeks, give or take. Food's gone. Found a stream a few miles back, so water's not an issue yet. Haven't died of dysentery, which I'm considering a personal victory." Kara's eyes narrowed. "You joke about death. Better than crying about it." One of the other huntresses spoke up, older than Kara, with a scar that ran from temple to jaw, like someone had tried to split her skull open and only partially succeeded. "Kara, we should not, the clan cannot afford." "I know, Drika." Kara's voice was quiet but absolute. "The clan needs us to hunt. The snows are coming. We have found nothing larger than rabbits in 3 weeks. Then we cannot afford mistakes." Drika's jaw was tight, her hand white-knuckled on her axe handle. "We cannot afford to be soft." "This is not softness." "How do you know?" "Because I do." The two orc women held each other's gaze, some argument happening in the space between words. The kind of conversation that happens between people who've known each other so long that language is optional, who can fight and reconcile without ever opening their mouths. Finally, Drika stepped back. "Your choice, your responsibility." "Always is." Kara turned back to Marcus. "You have many questions. Ask them." Marcus studied the 6 huntresses surrounding his fire. Armed, dangerous, but not attacking, not even threatening, just waiting. Like they needed something from him more than he needed something from them. "Why haven't you killed me?" he asked. "Because you are not prey," Kara said simply. "You are something much more rare." "Which is a man." The way she said it made Marcus's spine go cold. Not with fear, he was too tired for fear, but with understanding. The kind of understanding that arrived fully formed, terrible, and complete. "Your clan," he said slowly. "You don't have males." Kara's expression didn't change, but something shifted behind those amber eyes. Something old and tired and resigned. "Our males died. War took some, disease took others, accidents took the rest. The last one died 11 years ago." She paused. "We have survived. We are strong. We hunt. We fight. We endure. But strength doesn't make children." Marcus finished for her. "No, it does not." Marcus looked at the 6 huntresses with new eyes, saw past the weapons and the warrior stance and the carefully maintained composure, saw the desperation underneath, saw women who'd been watching their clan age for over a decade with no new life, no future, just a slow countdown to extinction. "You want me to," he couldn't finish the sentence. Wasn't entirely sure how to. "We want you to choose," Kara interrupted. "Come with us. See our clan. See what we offer. See who we are. Then decide." "Decide what?" "Whether to return to your human world where you are simply another lost soldier, or stay with warriors who see you not as enemy, but as answer." That's not much of a choice. It is more choice than most men get during war. She had a point. Marcus looked down at the broken watch in his hand, at the stopped hands that would never show the right time again, but that he carried anyway, because letting go felt like abandoning something he wasn't ready to abandon. His grandfather. His past. The idea that home was something you could navigate back to if you just had the right tools. But maybe home wasn't a place you returned to. Maybe it was something you built from scratch when the old maps stopped working. "If I say no," he asked. Kara met his eyes. "Then we give you supplies. Point you toward human territory. Let you go. Just like that, you'd let me walk away." "We are not monsters," Kara said quietly. "We are simply desperate. There is a difference." Behind her, Drika snorted. "Barely." "Drika, I speak truth." We are asking this human to give us what we need most, to save our bloodline, to ensure we do not simply fade into nothing. Her voice dropped. That is not a small thing to ask. No, Kira agreed. It is not, which is why it must be his choice, why we must give truth, not pretty lies. Marcus watched the exchange, saw the cracks in the warrior facade. These weren't savage raiders or mindless killers, or any of the things the propaganda posters back home had promised. They were people tired, desperate people who'd been dealt a terrible hand and were playing it the only way they knew how. They were soldiers just like him, fighting a different kind of war with different weapons, but soldiers nonetheless. All right, he heard himself say, I'll come see your clan, but I'm not promising anything after that. Kara nodded. We ask only for truth, nothing more. She extended her hand, a human gesture, deliberate and careful, a bridge between species. Marcus took it. Her palm was rough with calluses, warm as forge-heated metal, strong enough that he felt the restraint in her grip. Welcome to the first choice you have made in 3 weeks, Kara said. Feels about as good as I expected. Good choices rarely feel good at the time. That is how you know they are well. The Thornbriar clan's settlement was 4 hours north through terrain that would have killed Marcus if he'd tried navigating it alone. The Huntresses moved through the forest like water flowing around obstacles, finding paths where he saw only impassable undergrowth, maintaining a pace that pushed his exhausted body to its absolute limit. The youngest huntress, barely more than a teenager, with curious eyes and a bow almost as tall as she was, kept stealing glances at him. Not hostile, just fascinated, like he was some exotic creature that had wandered out of a storybook. That's Lyra, Kara said, catching his look. She has never seen a male before, orc or human. How old is she? 20 winters. She was 10 when our last man died. Marcus tried to imagine it. An entire decade without seeing half your own species. Growing up in a world where males existed only as memory, as story, as absence. What about other clans? He asked. Couldn't you, I don't know, trade borrow males? Drika laughed, a harsh, bitter sound like breaking glass. You think we did not try 4 clans we visited? 4 clans who turned us away. Said their males were too valuable to share. Said we should have protected ours better. Said perhaps extinction was nature's judgment on weak bloodlines. That is orc politics, Kara cut in. Strong clans survive. Weak clans die. We are weak now. They know it. They would rather watch us end than risk their own strength by helping us. That's barbaric. Is it? Drika's voice was sharp. Tell me, human, do your kingdoms not let villages starve when it is politically convenient? Do your nobles not sacrifice peasants to preserve their power? Do not pretend your species is somehow more enlightened. Marcus had no answer to that, because she was right. The last campaign he'd fought had been over grain taxes and trade routes, and he'd watched entire communities ground into dust because some lord hundreds of miles away had decided they were expendable. They walked in silence for a while. After that, Marcus too tired to talk, the huntresses too focused on navigation to care about conversation. Then Lyra spoke up, her voice quiet and uncertain. Is it true humans bury their dead in the ground? Marcus blinked at the non sequitur. Yes. Why? It seems, Lyra wrinkled her nose. Disrespectful. We burn our dead, return them to the sky and wind. Burying feels like hiding them, like being ashamed. We don't see it as hiding, more like planting, returning them to the earth so new life can grow. Oh, Lyra considered this. That is actually beautiful. Poetic. We have our moments. Do you have someone buried? Someone you miss? The question hit harder than intended. Marcus's hand moved automatically to his pocket, touched the broken watch through the fabric. My grandfather, he said, died when I was 19. Battlefield injury that went septic. Took him 3 weeks to finally let go. Was he a great warrior? No, he was a blacksmith, made horseshoes and plows and cooking pots, useful things that help people live, not die. Then you carry his work in your blood, Lyra said with absolute seriousness. His craft in your hands. That is how we honor the dead, by continuing what they started. I don't know how to smith, but you carry something he made. She nodded toward his pocket where the watch bulge was visible. That is his craft, his hands in metal, his time given to you. Marcus felt his throat tighten unexpectedly. Yeah, I guess it is. Then he is not gone. He simply travels with you now, in a different form. That's a good way to think about it. Orcs are not savage, Lyra said, a bit defensive. We think about things. We feel things deeply. We just express differently than humans. I'm starting to understand that. Good, because if you stay, you need to know we are not monsters. We are simply green. The clan settlement appeared suddenly through the trees, not because they had been hidden, but because Marcus's exhausted brain had stopped processing new information properly. 40 structures, maybe 50, mostly hide and timber construction built low to the ground. No walls, no fortifications, just homes arranged in a loose circle around a central fire pit, large enough to roast an entire ox. And everywhere, orc women. Old ones with skin like weathered bark and eyes that had seen too much. Young ones barely past childhood, still gangly and uncertain. Middle-aged ones with warrior scars and work-roughened hands. All of them stopped what they were doing when the hunting party entered. All of them stared at Marcus with the same expression, disbelief, like he was a myth made flesh. An ancient orc shuffled forward, bent with aged skin the color of moss on old stone, but eyes still sharp as obsidian chips. When she spoke, her voice was strange, almost musical, like she was perpetually on the verge of breaking into song. A human male, she said, in my valley, in my lifetime. The ancestors whisper truths I believed were lies. Elder Grimsa, Kara said respectfully. This is Marcus Thorn. He is considering. Considering, Grimsa clapped her hands together. Wise. Consideration is always wise. Better to think slow and choose well than decide fast and regret forever. She leaned close enough that Marcus could smell wood smoke and something medicinal. You look hungry, human man. We will feed you. We will show you we are not terrible. Then you can decide if we are terrible anyway. That seems fair. Fair is a myth children believe in, but we try our best. She turned and began shuffling back toward the central fire, already singing under her breath. Man in the valley, so deep green, hands reaching promises to keep. Kara sighed. She does that, sings constantly. Everything is a song to Elder Grimsa. Drives Drika to madness. I can hear you, Drika called from behind them. I know. They fed him meat. Marcus didn't ask about root vegetables. He couldn't identify bread that somehow managed to be both dense and light. It was the best meal he'd had in months. Army rations had a way of making everything taste like strategic necessity coated in sawdust. The clan gathered to watch him eat, not threatening, not aggressive, just curious, studying him like he was a puzzle they couldn't quite solve, a solution to a problem they'd been trying to answer for over a decade. A small orc child crept closer, maybe 7 or 8 years old, with huge eyes and a gap-toothed grin. She was clutching something in her small hands, a collection of objects that made Marcus's chest tighten. A bent spoon, a scrap of uniform fabric with embroidery, a button with a lion carved on it. Human things, from human soldiers, probably dead human soldiers. Nisa, Kira said gently, do not bother the guest. Not bothering, showing. Nisa held up her treasures proudly. Found these at old battlefield. Teacher says humans make many things, beautiful things, clever things. She held up the button. What is this animal? Marcus swallowed hard. It's a lion, a big cat from the southern kingdoms. You have big cats. Nisa's eyes went wide. How big? Big enough to eat an orc. Wow. She looked at the button with new reverence. Can I keep it? Nisa, Kara said firmly. The guest is eating. You can show your collection later. Nisa pouted but shuffled away, still clutching her battlefield salvage-like treasure. Marcus watched her go, felt something twist painfully in his chest. She doesn't know, does she, where those things came from? She was born after the last war ended, Kara said quietly. She does not understand that those objects came from dead men, from suffering. To her, they are simply interesting artifacts from a foreign culture. Maybe that's better. Maybe not knowing is a kind of mercy. Perhaps, or perhaps it is ignorance we cannot afford. Sometimes forgetting is worse than remembering. After the meal, Kara showed him around the settlement, introduced him to leather workers who could make armor that was somehow both flexible and protective. To herbalists who created medicines from plants Marcus had walked past 100 times without seeing. To metal workers who shaped iron without forges, using techniques that looked like magic but were probably just chemistry he didn't understand. We are not savages, Kara said as they walked. We simply live differently, think differently. I'm beginning to see that, Marcus said. I expected, well, the propaganda version, monsters. And we are not monsters. You're just people. People who've been dealt a shit hand and are trying to survive it. Kara stopped walking, turned to look at him, really look at him past the dirt and exhaustion and 3 weeks of being lost. That is perhaps the wisest thing a human has ever said in this valley. Give me time. I'll say something stupid to balance it out. I am counting on it. They walked to the edge of the settlement where the valley opened up to wilderness beyond. The sun was setting, painting everything in shades of amber and shadow. Marcus pulled out the broken watch, held it up to the fading light. My grandfather gave me this, he said. Told me it would always know the time, always keep me on schedule, always bring me home for dinner. He turned it over in his hands. But it's broken. Stopped during a battle 3 years ago. I kept carrying it anyway. Kept touching it like if I just believed hard enough, the hands would start moving again and show me the right time. He paused, staring at the frozen hands. And now I'm starting to think that maybe home isn't something you navigate back to. Maybe it's something you build from scratch when the old tools stop working. Kara was silent for a long moment. Then, if you stay, it will not be easy. My people will doubt you. Your people will call you traitor. There is no guarantee children will come bonus. No guarantee the clan survives. It is a gamble. Everything worth doing is a gamble. Even war, especially war. Marcus turned the watch over in his hands one more time, feeling its weight, its brokenness, its stubborn refusal to give him answers. I have one condition, he said. Kara raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. No more battlefield scavenging. No more collecting things from dead soldiers. Those aren't artifacts, they're people's lives, people's stories. Nisa will be disappointed. Nisa can collect flowers or rocks or literally anything that didn't come from someone's corpse. Agreed. Kara extended her hand again. We are desperate, Marcus Thorne, but we are not heartless. We simply forgot. When you are so focused on surviving, you sometimes forget how to be decent. They shook on it, and this time it felt less like a transaction and more like a promise. That night they gave him a tent, his own space, his own privacy, which surprised him. You thought we would force you, Drika asked when she saw his expression. We want hope human, not prisoner. We want choice, not captivity. I wasn't sure what to expect. Now you are sure. Sleep. Tomorrow you decide if you want to run or stay. But tonight you rest. Marcus lay in the dark tent listening to the sounds of an orc settlement at night. Low voices speaking in a language he didn't understand. The crackle of fires. Someone singing, probably Elder Grimsa, who seemed constitutionally incapable of silence. And he thought about choices, about how you could be lost for 3 weeks, but actually been lost for 3 years. About how war made you forget what you were fighting for until you were just fighting because fighting was what you did. About how home could become just a word, just a concept with no reality attached. About how sometimes the bravest thing wasn't going back. It was choosing not to. The watch sat on the ground beside him. Broken, useless, perfect. Morning came with the smell of cooking meat and the sound of children laughing. Orc children playing some game that involved a lot of running and even more growling than Marcus was comfortable with. He emerged from the tent to find Kara waiting. Did you sleep? She asked. Eventually, thought a lot first. And Marcus looked around the settlement, saw women working, children playing Elder Grimsa, already singing about breakfast and destiny. Saw Nissa showing her collection to another child, both of them arguing about whether the button came from a king or a knight. He saw life. Not perfect life, not easy life, but life that was still trying. Life that hadn't given up. I need to know something first, he said. Honestly, if I stay, if children come, if the clan survives, what happens to me? Am I shared? Am I just a means to an end? Kara's expression softened. You want to know if you are a person or a tool. Yeah, she took a breath. We are desperate, Marcus Thorne, but we are not monsters. If you stay as yourself. You choose who, you choose when, you choose how much. We ask, you answer. That is how we rebuild with consent, not contracts. And if I say no sometimes, then no means no. We survived 11 years without males. We will survive longer if we must, but we would prefer to survive with hope. It was the most honest answer anyone had given him in years. One more question, Marcus said. Come, do you sing like Elder Grimsa? Kara looked genuinely horrified. Absolutely not. Good, because that would have been a deal breaker. She laughed a real laugh, the kind that made her look younger, less burdened, more like someone who still remembered what joy felt like. So, she asked, are you running or staying? Marcus pulled out the watch one last time. Looked at the stoppered hands, the piece of his grandfather that didn't work anymore, but that he'd carried anyway because letting go felt like losing something he couldn't afford to lose. Then he turned and handed it to Nisa, who'd crept closer during the conversation. Here, he said, for your collection. Nisa's eyes went huge. Really? Really? But this one's special. It's not from a battlefield. It's from my grandfather. He was a good man who made good things. And now it's yours. What does it do? Used to tell time. Doesn't work anymore. Nisa turned it over in her small hands, studying it with the intense seriousness only children could achieve. Maybe it still works. Maybe just tells different kind of time now. Maybe tells time that matters instead of time that passes. Out of the mouths of orc children. Maybe you're right, Marcus said. He stood, looked at Kara, looked at Drika, who was watching from a distance, looked at Lyra, who was trying very hard to pretend she wasn't excited. I'm staying, he said, for now. We'll see how it goes. Fair enough, Kara said. But she was smiling a small, careful smile like she just won a bet she'd been afraid to make. 3 months passed like water over stones, gradually wearing away the sharp edges of difference, revealing the similarities underneath. Marcus learned Orcish. Badly at first, then less badly, his human tongue stumbling over sounds that seemed designed for throats shaped differently than his. But the clan was patient, especially the children who found his mistakes hilarious and his progress encouraging in equal measure. He taught them human customs in return, how to properly shake hands, how to make human bread that didn't require beating the dough into submission, how to read the stars the way his grandfather had taught him, finding patterns in chaos, navigation, and darkness. It wasn't perfect. Drika still didn't trust him, kept her hand on her axe whenever he was near, watched him with eyes that said, one wrong move and you're dead, in every language. Half the clan thought he had abandoned them at the first opportunity. The other half thought he was some elaborate spy sent by human kingdoms to report on orc weaknesses. But Lyra taught him how to hunt, how to move through the forest without disturbing it, how to wait for prey with the patience of stone. Elder Grimsa taught him clan songs despite his repeated protests that he couldn't carry a tune in a bucket. Nissa followed him everywhere, treating him like some exotic older brother who held secrets of the mysterious human world. And Kara talked to him. Real conversations about real things, about fear and leadership and the weight of responsibility, about how hard it was to be strong when strength hadn't been enough, about how she'd wanted to give up 100 times but couldn't because the clan needed her, because giving up meant extinction, because someone had to keep carrying the weight even when the weight was crushing. They were sitting by the central fire one evening, watching sparks rise towards stars when the messenger arrived. Human messenger. Young couldn't have been older than 20. His name was Finn, and he stammered when he was nervous. Seeing 40 orc women staring at him made him very, very nervous. Marcus Thorne, he managed. Marcus stood. That's me. Message from command. Your unit. They think you're dead. They need confirmation that... He trailed off, looking at the assembled orc women, at Kara standing beside Marcus, at the whole impossible situation. That you're still alive, or that you're not. Marcus felt the weight of it settle on his shoulders. The moment he'd known was coming since that first night by the campfire. The choice that had to be made real. They want me back, he said. Not a question. If you're alive, yes. Yes, sir. And if I say no, Finn blinked. You can't say no. You're a soldier. You have duty. I had duty, Marcus interrupted. Past tense. Tell them I'm alive. Tell them I'm safe. And tell them I'm staying where I am. Staying with, Finn looked at Kara at the clan, with orcs, with people who need me more than an army does. Finn stared at him like he'd sprouted a second head. They'll call you a deserter, probably. They'll say you betrayed your species, your kingdom, your let them. They might send someone to bring you back, or, Finn swallowed hard, or worse. Let them try it. Silence. Heavy and absolute. Every orc in the settlement was watching now, understanding what was happening, even if they didn't understand all the words. Marcus was making his choice public, making it official, burning the bridge back to his old life. Then Finn did something unexpected. He smiled small, sad knowing. You know what he said? You look happy. First time I've seen a soldier look happy in 3 years. He straightened and tried for proper military bearing, despite the circumstances. I'll deliver your message. I'll tell them you're staying. I'll tell them, he paused. I'll tell them you found something worth more than duty. Thank you. Don't thank me. I'm probably ending my career by delivering this. He turned to leave, then stopped. But for what it's worth, good luck. You are going to need it. He left, disappeared into the forest, left behind silence and questions and the weight of a choice made permanent. Kara touched Marcus's arm gently. Are you all right? I have no idea. Good. That means you are still thinking, still feeling. That is always better than being certain. What if they come back? What if they try to take me by force? Then we fight. Simple. Absolute. No hesitation. I can't ask you to between. You are not asking. We are offering. There is a difference. Drika stepped forward from the crowd. For what it is worth, human that took courage. Stupid courage, perhaps, but courage nonetheless. Thanks, I think. It is a compliment, mostly. That night, Marcus lay awake in his tent, listening to the settlement sleep around him. And he thought about how strange it was that he felt more at home here among people he'd been taught to fear than he ever had in the army that had claimed to be his family. Maybe that was the definition of home. Not where you came from, but where you chose to stay. 6 months after Marcus arrived, a child was born. Not to Kara, she'd made it clear early on that she wasn't interested in motherhood, that her role was warrior and leader, not caretaker. But to one of the other women, a healer named Sarna, who'd lost her mate 11 years ago and had given up hope of ever holding a child again. The birth was difficult, long, painful in the way that made Marcus realize how lucky the human race was to have survived at all. He wasn't there for the actual delivery. Orc customs about birth were complicated and specific, but he was there after when Sarna held the infant for the first time. The child was small, impossibly small, with green skin like her mother and features that were somehow both orc and human, neither fully one nor the other, but beautifully, perfectly both. They named her Vasa, an old orcish word that meant bridge. Marcus held her for the first time and felt something break open in his chest. Not a bad break, the good kind. The kind that happens when something has been locked too tight for too long and finally cracks open to let light through. She's so small, he whispered. All babies are small, Kara said. She was standing beside him watching. Not possessive, not jealous, just present. That is how babies work. What if I mess this up? What if I... You will mess it up, Kara interrupted. All parents mess it up. That is what makes you a parent, showing up scared and doing it anyway. That's not reassuring. It is not meant to be. Reassurance is a lie we tell children. Adults must accept uncertainty. Vasa grabbed Marcus's finger with a tiny green hand, held on with surprising strength for something so small. Bridge between species. Hope made flesh. 1 year passed, then 2. More children came slowly, carefully, each one a miracle and a gamble. Not many, not fast, but enough. Enough to give the clan what it hadn't had in over a decade of future. The human kingdoms didn't invade, didn't attack, but they didn't accept either. Marcus became a ghost in official records, deserter, traitor, cautionary tale about men who chose monsters over duty. He didn't care. He'd learned something in those years, learned that family wasn't about blood or species or what the world expected. Family was about who showed up when things got hard, who taught you their language and learned yours in return, who made space for your brokenness and didn't demand you fix it. Nisa was 12 now, still collected things but flowers and interesting rocks instead of battlefield salvage. Still carried the broken watch everywhere, said it was her most treasured possession. "Does it work yet?" Marcus asked her one afternoon while she was helping him prepare dinner. "Yes," she said seriously, "just not the way you think." "What do you mean?" "It does not tell what time it is. It tells me where home is." She held it up, watching how the broken hands caught the light. "And home is here." Marcus felt his throat tighten. "Yeah, home is here." Elder Grimsa died in her sleep one winter night. Peaceful death, surrounded by the clan she'd led and loved, singing right up until the end. They burned her body on a pyre that lit up the entire valley, returning her to the sky and wind and stars she'd sung about for 93 years. At the ceremony, Kara stood beside Marcus. They weren't together romantically. Their relationship had settled into something deeper and stranger than romance. A partnership built on respect and shared purpose, and the kind of trust that came from fighting the same battles together. "She liked you," Kara said as the flames rose. "She sang at you constantly." "That's how she showed affection," Marcus said. "Terrible love language, but effective." They watched the smoke rise, watched the ashes scatter on the wind. "Do you regret it?" Kara asked quietly. Staying, Marcus thought about it. Really thought about the human life he'd left behind, the army career he'd abandoned, the roads not taken, and the choices made permanent. "No," he said. "I regret that it had to be a choice at all. That the world divides itself into green and not green and pretends that matters. It matters to most people. Then most people are wrong." Kara smiled. "Careful, that kind of thinking starts revolutions." "Maybe we need a revolution." 5 years in the valley, 5 years of building something that shouldn't exist, a hybrid clan, mixed species children who were neither fully orc nor fully human, but perfectly beautifully both. The other orc clans noticed. Some were disgusted, some were curious. One actually sent envoys, asked how it was possible, how they'd managed it. Kara's answer was simple. "We stopped caring about impossible and started focusing on necessary." Marcus was 32 now, gray showing in his hairlines around his eyes, from squinting at sun and smiling at children who called him father in 2 languages. He was teaching weapon techniques to a group of younglings when Nissa found him. She was 16 now, tall for her age, training to be a huntress like her mother's. "Marcus," she said, "someone is here." "Who?" "Human soldier. Says he knows you." Marcus's stomach dropped. After 5 years, he'd almost forgotten that the old world still existed out there, still remembered him, still possibly wanted him back. He followed Nisa to the valley entrance, found a man in military uniform, older, graying, with scars on his face that spoke of campaigns won and lost. Commander Brecht, Marcus's old superior officer. "Thorn," Brecht said, voice carefully neutral. "Commander, you look well." "I am well." "Heard rumors you were alive. Didn't believe them. Heard rumors you were with orcs. Believe those even less." He looked around the valley at the mixed children playing, at the orc women watching warily. "Believe them now." Silence. "You here to arrest me?" Marcus asked. "No." "Kill me?" "No." "Then why?" Brecht pulled out a document. Official seal. Lots of text Marcus couldn't read from this distance. "Discharge papers," Brecht said. "Honorable discharge. Officially, you died 5 years ago. Unofficially," he paused. "Unofficially, you found something worth more than war. And command decided that maybe, just maybe, we could learn from that." Marcus took the papers, stared at them. Official proof that he was dead on paper, but alive in ways that mattered. "There's talk," Brecht continued, "in the kingdoms, about making contact, real contact. Not war, not even formal peace, just coexistence. Your valley here, it's proof it's possible." "It was always possible," Marcus said. "You just didn't want to see it." "Fair point." Brecht extended his hand. "Good luck, Thorn. You'll need it." "Everyone keeps saying that." "Because it is true." They shook hands. Old soldier to former soldier. Brothers in arms who'd chosen different wars. Then Brecht left, walked back to a human world that was maybe, possibly, slowly starting to realize that green and not green weren't destinies, just pigments. Marcus stood at the valley entrance that evening, watching the sun set over wilderness, thinking about roads not taken and paths chosen. Kara found him, she always did eventually, some sixth sense for when he needed company, even if he didn't know it himself. Thinking, she asked. Always. Regretting and never. They stood in comfortable silence, the kind that happens when words become optional. You know what I learned, Marcus said after a while. Tell me. Home isn't a place. It's not north or south or any direction a compass can show. Home is where you make space for each other's brokenness and call it family. Kara looked at him, amber eyes reflecting firelight from the valley below. That is possibly the wisest thing you have ever said. Don't worry, I'll say something stupid tomorrow to maintain balance. I am counting on it. Behind them, the valley settled into night. Fires being lit, children being called in for dinner, Elder Grimsa's songs still echoing in memory even though the singer was gone. And Marcus understood something his grandfather had never taught him. Something you could only learn by getting lost and finding your way to somewhere completely unexpected. Sometimes the bravest journey isn't finding your way home. It's realizing you've been home all along. You just had to build it yourself while nobody was looking. 10 more years passed, the valley changed, grew, expanded. More children came slowly but steadily. The youngest generation grew up in a world where mixed species wasn't unusual, wasn't shocking, was just normal. Where having a green mother and a human father was no stranger than having brown eyes instead of blue. Some of the other orc clans began sending emissaries. Cautiously, skeptically, but sending them nonetheless, asking how it worked. Asking if males could be shared, not stolen, not borrowed, but genuinely shared through cooperation instead of conquest. Kara, now graying herself but still sharp as a blade, negotiated these arrangements with the same pragmatic precision she brought to everything. We are not a charity, she told the envoys, but we are not hoarders either. If your clans are willing to respect consent and treat males as people rather than resources, we can discuss cooperation. Some clans walked away offended. Some stayed to negotiate. Slowly, painfully slowly, a network began forming. Clans that had been isolated pockets of extinction, now connecting, sharing, surviving together. It wasn't perfect. It was messy and complicated and fraught with old hatreds and older fears. But it was something. It was better than nothing. Marcus was 42 now, his hair more gray than brown, his body carrying the accumulated aches of 2 decades of hard living. He'd become something strange in those years, not quite human anymore. Not orc either, but something in between. A bridge in human form. The valley children, including Vasa, who was now 14 and showing her mother's skill with healing magic, treated him like a beloved uncle who told terrible jokes and knew entirely too much about human history. The older generation treated him with a respect he still wasn't entirely comfortable with, but he'd stopped questioning it, stopped wondering if he'd made the right choice. The choice had been made, and unmade choices were just ghosts that haunted you if you let them. He was teaching a mixed group of adolescents about navigation using stars and landmarks, the old ways his grandfather had taught him when Nissa came running up. She was 26 now, a full huntress, recently bonded to another warrior named Grisk. She was grinning. Marcus, you need to come. Now. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Everything's right. Just come. She dragged him to the valley entrance where a group had gathered. More humans. 3 of them. But not soldiers this time. Civilians. A middle-aged woman with ink-stained fingers. An elderly man with a scholar's stoop. A young person with an artist's appraising eye. Historians, the woman said when Marcus approached. From the Royal Archives. We were sent to document this. She gestured at the valley. To record what you've built here. For posterity. Marcus blinked. You want to record this? Why? Because in 200 years, someone will claim it never happened, the scholar said. His voice was dry, academic, but his eyes were bright with genuine interest. They'll say humans and orcs could never coexist. That mixing species was impossible. That anyone who tried was either a liar or a fool. He pulled out a journal. We're here to make sure the truth survives long enough to prove them wrong. Over the next 3 weeks, the historians stayed in the valley. They interviewed everyone, orc and human, adult and child. They sketched the buildings, the tools, the weapons. They recorded songs and stories and the mundane details of daily life that revealed more about coexistence than any grand gesture could. The young artist, whose name was River, and who preferred not to specify gender, spent hours drawing portraits of the mixed children. "They're beautiful," River said to Marcus one afternoon while sketching Vasa. "Not in spite of being hybrid. Because of it, they have the best of both species." "They have the complications of both too," Marcus said. "Growing pains are hard when your body doesn't quite know which blueprint to follow." "True, but complications are better than extinction." "Fair point." One evening, the historian woman, her name was Maris, sat with Marcus by the fire. "Can I ask you something personal?" "Sure." "Do you ever regret it, leaving your old life behind?" Marcus thought about his answer. Really thought, because Maris would write it down, and someone 200 years from now might read it and wonder about the man who'd made this choice. "Regret is the wrong word," he said finally. "I mourn sometimes. Mourn the life I didn't live, the person I could have been. But regret means wishing you'd made different choices. And I don't wish that. This life," he gestured at the valley, at the children playing at Kara, teaching combat techniques to a mixed group, at the whole impossible beautiful mess of it. "This life is worth everything it cost." Maris wrote it down, then looked up. "One more question. What would you say to someone else facing a similar choice? Someone standing at a crossroads between the safe path and the impossible one?" Marcus smiled. "I'd say the safe path isn't as safe as it looks, and the impossible path isn't as impossible as they tell you. But more than that," he paused, choosing words carefully, "I'd say that home isn't something you find on a map. It's something you build with your hands and your heart in the place where you finally stop running." 3 weeks later, the historians left carrying journals full of stories and sketches and testimonies, carrying proof that the impossible had happened and was still happening. "Do you think it will matter?" Kira asked Marcus as they watched the historians disappear into the forest. "Do you think anyone will care about what we built here?" "I don't know," Marcus admitted. "Maybe yes, maybe no. Maybe it matters and no one cares. Maybe it doesn't matter and everyone cares. But we did it anyway. We built something beautiful without knowing if anyone would ever see it or appreciate it. And that's enough." "Is it?" "It has to be." Another 5 years passed. Marcus was 47, starting to feel his age in ways that made him understand why his grandfather had looked so tired in those final years. But he was also happier than he'd ever been. Surrounded by family, not the family he'd been born into, but the family he'd chosen and who'd chosen him in return. Vasa was 19 now, fully trained as a healer, bonded to a young human man who'd come from another kingdom seeking the legendary Mixed Valley everyone whispered about. Nisa had 3 children of her own. The valley population had grown to nearly 200, still small, still fragile, but viable, in a way it hadn't been 16 years ago. And then on a spring morning that smelled like rain and new growth, Kara collapsed during training. The healers, including Vasa, did everything they could. But some things couldn't be healed. Some battles couldn't be won. Cancer, Vasa said quietly, advanced. Hidden in her body for who knows how long, while she kept leading, kept fighting, kept refusing to show weakness. They moved Kara to a comfortable tent near the central fire, made sure she was never alone. The entire clan took turns sitting with her, talking to her, singing to her. Marcus spent most of his time there. They'd never been lovers. Their connection had always been something different, deeper, harder to name. But she was his partner in every way that mattered. The person who'd given him a chance when everyone else would have killed him. The warrior who'd become his closest friend. "I am dying," Kara said one evening. Not asking, stating fact. "Yes. Do not lie to make me comfortable. I appreciate that." "You're welcome." She smiled weakly. "We built something good, did we not? You and I. We built something impossible. Impossible and good. Both can be true." Her breathing was labored now. "Promise me something. Anything. Keep building. Keep proving that species does not determine worth. Keep showing the world that family is choice, not blood." She grabbed his hand with surprising strength. "Keep being the bridge, Marcus Thorne. It is the most important work anyone can do. I promise." She died 3 hours later, quietly surrounded by the clan she'd led and loved, singing old warrior songs with her final breaths. They burned her body on the largest pyre the valley had ever built, sent her to the sky and wind, and stars with songs that shook the trees. And Marcus stood there feeling hollow and full, at the same time grieving and grateful in equal measure. After the ceremony, Vasa came to stand beside him. "She was my war leader before she was my friend," she said. "She taught me that strength is not about never falling. It is about getting up every time you do fall." "She taught me that home is something you build," Marcus said, "or something you're given." "By are good lessons." They stood in silence watching the smoke rise. "What will you do now?" Vasa asked. Now that she is gone, Marcus thought about the choice he'd made 16 years ago by a campfire in the wilderness, about every choice since then that had led to this moment, this place, this family. "I'll keep building," he said, "because that's what she asked me to do, because that's what home requires." Marcus lived another 12 years after Kara died, 12 years of watching the valley grow, watching the children he'd helped create become adults, watching the impossible slowly become normal. He never remarried, never bonded to anyone else. His relationship with Kara had been so specific, so unique, that trying to replicate it felt like an insult to her memory. But he had family. Dozens of adopted nieces and nephews' children who called him Grandfather Marcus, young adults, who came to him for advice about love and war, in the complicated business of being hybrid, in a world that still couldn't quite decide if that was allowed. On his last day, because you always know your last day, when it comes that same quiet certainty Marcus had felt by the campfire all those years ago, he asked to be carried to the valley entrance, the place where he'd first arrived, lost and afraid, and certain he was going to die. Vasa came with him, now in her 30s, and a clan leader in her own right. She held his hand as he looked out over the forest. "Regrets?" she asked, echoing the question that historian had asked so many years ago. Marcus thought about it one final time, about the human life he'd abandoned, about Commander Brecht and Finn the Messenger and all the soldiers he'd fought beside who died while Marcus lived, about his grandfather's watch still in Nissa's possession, still pointing home, even though the hands never moved. "No," he said, "no regrets, just gratitude." For what? For getting lost, for making the worst campfire in the history of campfires, for being found by warriors who needed me as much as I needed them, for learning that home isn't something you inherit, it's something you build when the old maps stop working. Vasa squeezed his hand. "Thank you for building it. Thank you for staying. Thank you for making it worth staying for." They sat in silence as the sun set, and Marcus felt that same quiet certainty from all those years ago. But this time it wasn't the quiet before death. It was the quiet of completion, of a life fully lived, of choices made and never regretted. His last thought as his eyes closed for the final time was simple. The watch never knew the right time, but it always pointed home, and home was here. The valley burned Marcus's body that night with full honors, sent him to join Kara and Elder Grimsa and his grandfather and all the other people who'd shaped him into the bridge he'd become. And life continued because that's what life does. Children grew, the valley expanded. More refugees arrived, both human and orc, seeking the legendary place where species didn't matter, and family was something you chose. The historians' journals were published. Skeptics claimed they were fiction. Believers treated them as gospel. The truth, as always, was more complicated and more beautiful than either extreme. But in the valley, in the place Marcus Thorne had accidentally found and deliberately kept in the community he'd helped build from desperation and hope and the stubborn refusal to accept extinction, the work continued. Because home isn't something you find, it's something you build, and building never stops. 50 years after Marcus died, a young human soldier named Thomas got lost in Orc territory. Starving, desperate, certain he was going to die, he lit what he was sure would be his last campfire, and was found by a hunting party from a mixed clan, led by a warrior with green skin and human features. Someone who was neither fully orc nor fully human, but beautifully, perfectly both. "You are lost," the warrior said. Her accent was strange, like two languages trying to speak at once. "Come with us. We will feed you, give you choice, show you that sometimes the best way forward is to stop going backward." Thomas stared at the hybrid warrior, at her companions, who were equally mixed, at the impossible made flesh. "How is this possible?" he asked. The warrior smiled. "Because someone believed it was necessary, and necessity is more powerful than impossibility. She extended her hand. Come, we will tell you about the man who got lost and found home, about the broken watch that still points true, about how bridges are built, not with maps and compasses, but with choice and hope, and the courage to stay when everyone expects you to run. Thomas took her hand, and the building continued, because that's what home requires, not perfection, not certainty, not even success. Just the willingness to keep building even when the old maps stop working and the world says it's impossible. Just the courage to make space for each other's brokenness and call it family. Just the choice to stay when you could run, to build when you could abandon, to hope when despair seems easier. That's all home ever needs. Someone willing to build it, someone brave enough to stay, someone who understands that the most dangerous thing you can do in a divided world is choose to build bridges, and then build them anyway. Because sometimes being lost is the only way to find where you actually belong. Sometimes the broken compass points truer than the working one ever did. And sometimes home isn't where you came from, it's where you chose to stay. The valley stands today, they say, larger now, more established, but still faithful to the vision. Two desperate people created by a campfire 16 years ago. One orc warrior who refused to let her clan die, and one lost soldier who learned that being found doesn't always mean going back. The historians were right to record it, because 200 years from now, someone will claim it never happened, and the journals will prove them wrong. The buildings will stand as testament. The descendants will carry the truth in their very DNA hybrid, mixed beautifully complicated proof that the impossible becomes possible when someone is brave enough to try. And somewhere in that valley, in a place of honor, they say a broken watch sits on display. Hands frozen at 2:47, never showing the right time, never working properly. But pointing home nonetheless, always pointing home, because home isn't about time, it's about choice, and the watch knows where Marcus Thorne chose to stay, where he chose to build, where he chose finally completely courageously to be found. The end is just another beginning, and the building never stops. Not if we're brave enough to keep building, not if we're willing to choose hope over fear, connection over division, family over blood. Not if we remember that sometimes the most revolutionary act is simply choosing to stay, to build, to make home out of nothing but determination and hope, and the stubborn refusal to accept that bridges can't be built. They can be built. They have been built. They will keep being built. One choice at a time, one bridge at a time, one home at a time. And that's how worlds change. Not with wars or edicts or grand proclamations, but with one lost soldier who chose to stay, one warrior who chose to hope, one clan who chose to try, and an entire valley that proved the world wrong one day at a time, one child at a time, one choice at a time, until the impossible becomes possible, until the divided becomes connected, until home becomes not where you're from, but where you choose to build. That's the story. That's the truth. That's the legacy of the man who got lost and found home in the last place he expected, in the arms of warriors who needed him as much as he needed them, in a valley that shouldn't exist but does, in a family that wasn't given but chosen, in a home that was built, not found. And that's the most important lesson of all. Home is always something you build. Sometimes you just need to get lost first to find where you're supposed to build it.